svona einhvern veginn. Halló, halló, halló.
Hello, welcome to, I think this is the third, or is it the fourth iteration of JS Meetup from the sequel, Rebirth. Just a quick poll, who here does not understand Icelandic? Okay, and we can hopefully adapt.
We can adapt, hold the tradition.
Yeah, so I would first of all like to give a big shout out to Tempo. It's awesome that they invited us over. They're giving us food, this venue, it's amazing. I love this setup. We have to talk later about doing this again sometime. But yeah, thank you so much. We have 3 talks today. We'll run through them. Dinner will be here at 6:30-ish. Yeah, I'm not going to talk here all night. Maybe you should just get started. So the first talk is by Birkir. I'm personally very excited about this talk. I've been pinging him probably every week for a couple of weeks now, asking him about this talk. So yeah, please give applause to Birkir.
Thank you. Do you hear me all right? Or no? Okay. Good. Yeah. Great to see how many people came. Beginning, I think we only saw like 10, way more, so that's good. And I also wanted to thank Tempo for hosting us. Very good. So yeah, my name is Birkir Guðjónsson. I'm a 29-year-old guy from Westman Islands. I live here in Reykjavik now. That's me in action 15 years ago. I've been building things with computers for as long as I can remember. I work for Bueno. It's a full-service creative agency of 65 people. And we have offices in San Francisco, New York, and Reykjavik. We design and build digital products, brands, and experiences with all sorts of clients, ranging from big, well-established companies and even less-known startups that you probably have never heard of. We also work for some Icelandic clients, you can see in the video. And we also do our own kind of branding elements, like the famous Bueno hot dog. That's enough for introduction. Let's dive into the topic. What can React render and how can it really do that? According to Wikipedia, React is a JavaScript web framework built by Facebook in 2011. But it's actually not a framework. And it's actually not just for the web. I hope you can see this. Because React has recently been known to be able to render to just the DOM. This is a list I compiled from one of those GitHub awesome lists. And we have everything ranging from WebGL, TV, hardware, audio, and even design tools like Sketch and Figma. So let's zoom on this a little bit. React has a layer commonly known as the reconciler. And it lives between the user code, the code that we actually write. It's usually written with JSX, and the platform code. And this is lower level APIs like hardware and the DOM or even native views like iOS and Android. Reconciler is just a diffing algorithm that helps React figure out which DOM elements to update on state change. So when you change the state, React will update the DOM to reflect. It is the part of React that is shared between multiple platforms like React DOM and React Native. There are two generations of the reconciler throughout the history of React. We have the stack reconciler that was built originally for the DOM, and probably the part of the reason it's called a web framework. And later, I think 1 or 2 years ago, we got Fiber, a total rewrite of the reconciler. Oops. Are we on? Okay. Yeah, so Facebook did a total rewrite of the reconciler with React 16. And it can perform the reconciliation of the React tree by splitting work into minor chunks. And so it can now prioritize, pause, and resume work. And this is a big thing, enabling like more render targets than just the DOM. So just for kicks, I'm going to show you how it looks under the hood. Here we have an instance of the reconciler class from Facebook. And it has all these methods that are unpopulated with our own code. What it needs to know is how to create an instance of an object, how to append and remove children from the tree, and then how to deal with state changes. And these are your props from React. You can also tell it how to deal with text nodes specifically, and this comes from the DOM, but applied to different render targets like React Native, where you have to deal with text as well. So if we want to create a super simple DOM render using this reconciler, this is how we would do it. We have to fill out what we want to do when to create the objects. And in this instance, because it's just a super simple DOM renderer, we just take the type from React and we create document.createElement of whatever that type is, div or button or whatever you want it to be. And then we set the attributes of the DOM element to reflect the props that come from React. And then we describe how to append and remove childs like this. And this is just the classic DOM manipulation methods, append child and remove child that you know from the DOM. We also need to implement how to update props or deal with state changes. And in this case, we just take those props and we apply the attributes to it. And in this case, if it's a text, we just replace the text with a new text. Here I have my React Simple DOM imported, but currently I'm rendering with React DOM. So for demonstration purposes, I added my own element called JS Meetup, and it renders the text normal text. But now if I switch to my own React Simple DOM, it will render something completely different. And that's because I added a small if statement in my reconciler to output something else, anything I want, like we can see over there. And one thing to note is that all normal React internals like useEffect and useState and so on, they work just as well with any reconciler. Okay, now that we know how to create a very simple DOM renderer, let's see how we can do that with WebGL. Before we go into details about this, let's zoom out a little bit and see what technologies we can use to render WebGL. This is how to make a rotating tube in WebGL. And as you can see, it's a It's a hefty code, about 200 lines, just to make that box. It's rather verbose because WebGL works by drawing triangles and lines. So we need like 12 triangles and to form a box, and it becomes very hard to write a reconciler. And it's also very hard because we don't have any objects to map to React. So, but the good thing is the problem has already been solved by the JS community. There is a library called 3JS that helps us build 3D objects or 3D scenes with 3D objects. You can create boxes and shapes, spheres, and it also helps us with lighting and effects and shadows and so on. And this is the same rotating cube built using 3JS. So creating a reconciler for this kind of code becomes much simpler because we can map React node to object-like properties like scene and perspective camera, box geometry, mesh standard material, and so on. So while thinking about these three JS objects, this is how a reconciler could be implemented. It's the same as the previous with the React Simple DOM reconciler, but instead of returning a DOM element, I return 3.mesh, which is a 3D object for 3JS. Or if it's a different type, I return a different type. Then we can simply append the 3D object to its parent if we need to. The only problem is that in some 3D objects, like mesh in this case, we need to set properties to it. And in this case, we need to set geometry to the geometry property. And we can do that by checking what the parent is and checking what the children is, and then just attaching it as a property. We also can remove children, and then if we need to do any cleanup, we can do it here. We can dispose of the geometry to free up memory. So when we compare the React code to the left and then 3JS code to the right, we can see how it maps to React. We have our mesh there, and we have our geometry and material, and you can also see how the props map together. And you can do some processing on the backend if you want to convert the string red to the hexadecimal value of red. We can also add objects like lights and effects and so on. There's already a 3JS reconciler for React called React 3 Fiber. And this is a demo of the same rotating cube. And as you can see, the code is much simpler. Everything starts from the canvas element that we import from React 3 Fiber, and it will render the children. One thing to note is that I import a hook called useFrame, which is a hook that we can use to inject into the recast animation frame loop, and we can do all sorts of state changes there to reflect on the objects. So the question becomes, what's the real benefit of using something like React 3 Fiber versus just doing it with pure 3JS? We get lower memory footprint because the render leverages React lifecycle methods. So when things in React unmount, we can free up the memory and clear textures and so on. This is something you'd otherwise have to manually do if you use 3JS. This is a demo of like thousands of objects. It's actually running right now, real time, with good performance, and it has advanced lighting and everything. Next thing is pointer events. Pointer events are abstracted away with raycasting, which is a built-in tool from 3GS. And as you can see here, like I can light up each an individual component. The pointer events come as real props, so I can subscribe to them and do some state changes. And everything works, has a good performance. And the next big thing is it's cross-platform. So it can render in the browser, and it can also render in React Native. And this is thanks to a lot of work that Expo did by porting WebGL 1.0 and 2.0 to React Native. We also get pointer events, like you can see with the Lorem demo, multi-touch and everything. And last but not least, and in my opinion, the biggest benefit is it can participate in React's near infinite ecosystem of components, tools, and add-ons, many of which are cross-platform out of the box and can directly operate on your meshes and materials. Let's take React Spring, for example. It's an animation library that uses physics instead of time and curve that you're used to with DOM. This is an example how to use React Spring with DOM elements. I just have a use Spring hook over there, and I rotate the box 90 degrees when I press it. And here we have React 3 Fiber using that same hook, use Spring, and I just rotate a random axis 90 degrees, and it just works cross-platform. The same goes with React Native. Everything just works. And because pointer events are replicated as DOM events, we can use libraries to deal with those events for free. For example, React use gesture that translate pointer events to gestures like swipe and scroll and so on. It can be hooked up with React Spring and React 3 Fiber, like in this demo. This is like a low poly football kind of thing that I'm tracking around, and this is the complete code to do that. Like everything becomes super simple, but at the same time very declarative. And adding physics can be as easy as using a webhook, or not webhook, sorry, just a React hook. This is a physics engine called Canon.js that we just import using a hook. So combining everything together, we can create an experience like this. This could be a train selector experience where you have to pick your seat. And as you can see, I have multiple cabins, and each cabin has a rows of seats, and each row has like multiple seats, and all the props are like colors and the positions and so on. And it starts to be very easy to develop. The development experience is quite good because we have hot reloading and so on. Very cool. Pink seats. Or combining audio, motion, and gestures in a game-like experience. This is a game made by Paul Henschel, the author of React 3 Fiber. He's pretty good at doing 3D stuff. And just for demonstration purposes, I removed all the components from the scene. This is the scene, and I'm just adding the components back in there. And you'll start to see things form like stars and explosions and track and particles, rings, and then I can add rocks and planets and enemies I have over there. And everything just hot reloads. The render loop never stops. It just continues to run. And of course, it's not a game unless we add effects. Boom. That's an easy way to build a game, right? So yeah, at Ueno, we've been leveraging this technology to build awesome experiences with our customers. Útmeða is a project we made with Tjarnagatan. With the aim of the project is to promote improved public health by encouraging people to express their mental well-being and seek professional assistance when needed. Here we leveraged RIA3 Fiber to do a video swapping effect and a waveform effect, but everything else is just DOM. So we're not really rendering any 3D objects on the scene. So as you can see here, when I press, I'll form this 3D or like a video effect. These are 10 videos that we can scroll in a timeline. So yeah, RIA3 Fiber, you can use it to do other things than just 3D. And earlier this year, we launched a project with our friends at Nova, Snjallheimilið, or Smart Home. The idea was to build an experience where you can see all the different devices that Nova has to offer, smart devices. So the idea was to build kind of a house and in a 3D world where you can see different rooms. It's like a cross-section of a house. And everything is built with React. We have both DOM and we also have the 3D scene built with 3JS. And yeah, let me pick some of the products. Yeah, we also have different lightings, baked-in textures, and so on. So let me zoom in here. And this is just regular HTML stuff. Yeah, it's a crazy cat. We also have a nice Easter egg inside here. This bandit, crazy bandit. What's up? We may later do a separate talk on just like in-depth behind the scenes of this experience. There's a lot going into stuff like this. Everything from the designer to the 3D artist, handoff to development, and then like what it takes to actually do this. So stay tuned for that. Yes. Otherwise, I'm done. Thank you. Should we do questions? Yep. Okay. Any questions?
Are the examples you showed accessible somewhere?
Yeah. Are the examples that I showed accessible somewhere? Yeah. I think all of the examples projects that we at Ueno made are available on the RIA3 Fiber website.
How is a background in 3D animation? How valuable is that? Or can you just like...
The question is how is background animation in 3JS? How valuable is it?
Yeah, like do you need to know 3D models?
No, not really. You can just start by experiment with all sorts of objects, make them move and so on, and start from there. As soon as you go into it, it's going to be very simple.
How long did Snjallheimilið take to implement?
I don't remember. It was a few weeks. Yeah, I think it was like 4 weeks or something like that. All right. Thank you. You can reach me on Twitter and GitHub.
Thank you so much for that awesome talk. We'll take a couple minutes while we're connecting computers.
The toilets, for those who don't know where the toilets are, it's outside this room, and you walk through a doorway, and it's on the left. Okay.
Yeah, and I hope everyone has gotten something to drink, something to snack on. Yeah, we'll be back in a second.
Já. Já. Ég ætla samt bara að byrja bráðum, sko. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Ekki alveg. Eftir að opna keynote. Já, eftir að opna. Ó, fjandinn. Hvað byrju? Þetta ekki gott. Ekki bara kæra þig á? Ég er búin að, já.
Jæja. Yeah. It's time for the next talk. We've got Árni Freyr from Tempo, and he's going to show us how fast we can build if you have your own UI kits. Give it up.
Thank you very much. Yes, I'm Árni Freyr. I'm a team lead and a front-end engineer here at Tempo. And yeah, this is a talk basically about also why we at Tempo decided to build our own UI kit and how we ended up doing it. So for those of you who are not with Tempo, we have been developing add-ons in the Jira ecosystem for many years. And I wanted to start off with asking, who knows what Jira is? Okay, the question should have been, who does not know what Jira is? Okay, almost everybody is familiar with it, and everybody loves it, right? Yes, well, and everybody loves time tracking, right? Because that's what Tempo is all about. But time tracking is not fun, but we try to make it as painless as possible. And we have these three add-ons in the past, Tempo Planner, Tempo Timesheets, and Tempo Budgets. These are our add-ons for Jira Server. And for a long time, Jira was only available on server, and then they started to move to the clouds. And of course, we wanted to do that as well. But way back when, we were only had these three products for Jira Server, And these products were all developed by different teams in isolation. And we didn't really put too much effort into building a unified look and feel across any of these products. So our customers even complained that they didn't feel like when they navigated from Tempo Planner to Tempo Timesheets that they were in related products. It just looked very different. So we wanted for a long time to do something about this. And finally, we got the opportunity to jump on that when in January 2016, we at Tempo started work on moving Tempo to the cloud. And this was a massive undertaking because we had to almost completely rewrite everything in our products. But for a front-end developer, this was really exciting because we could finally throw away all of this old technology that we didn't want to use anymore. So no more jQuery, no more Backbone, no more velocity templates or something like that. And instead, we could just implement our products in the technology which we loved, which was React. So this felt like Christmas in a sense. It was very enjoyable, yet equally stressful period because we had a pretty hard deadline on finishing this rewrite for Tempo to the clouds. And as the deadline grew nearer, more and more developers joined the project, and finally all developers at the company, both here in Iceland and in our office in Montreal, Canada, were working on this together. And you know, anytime you need the project to be finished quickly, you just throw more developers at it, and we will just in linear time, you know, more developers, we will then be faster, right? This was not really the case. There were many new faces that, you know, didn't align with us on what technologies to use or didn't know how to navigate the code base, and, you know, it was a very stressful period. So we kind of did not do enough knowledge sharing at this point in time. So what happened was that because we were moving so fast and new developers were joining this project on a weekly basis, there were many times where a developer would have to implement some feature which had a UI component like a button or an input or a popover or whatever, and this developer would just do whatever. He would use some framework to do it or some library he found on GitHub or just build it from scratch. So this is very bad engineering, and we're not too proud of this moment in time, but it was very stressful, as I said earlier. So we kind of felt like we had painted ourselves into a corner. So we sat down and said, we need one UI kit to use everywhere. And we decided to use Bootstrap, like every other developer in 2016. And the reason why this is kind of important in our journey towards finally building our own UI kit, because after we decided to use Bootstrap, we finally experienced how good it is to use one robust UI kit everywhere. Because we managed to move very fast, and all of our views and features had the same look and feel. And our developers also felt more confident when implementing new UI features, as many of them were not particularly good at writing CSS code, but Bootstrap did most of the CSS heavy lifting for them. So this was pretty good. Now, finally in 2017, early, we finished rewriting Tempo for the cloud. Everything was written in React and Redux and Bootstrap. And we immediately started experiencing problems with Bootstrap. Bootstrap is a very big dependency. At that time, it was really big. And the Bootstrap CSS just bleeds everywhere in the DOM. It just affects DOM elements that you wouldn't expect. But the biggest downside of using Bootstrap is that your application looks like a Bootstrap application, which isn't really nice. And our designers were not happy with that. So they said, we want to redesign Tempo a bit. And they built their own Tempo design language, which would cover designs and UX for all basic UI components we would ever need: buttons, inputs, form elements, popovers, dialogues, you name it. And this was kind of necessary for us to establish a clear visual identity for Tempo across all of our products. And then when the designers would design new features and functionality for Tempo, regardless of which product it was, they would use these components from their design language to build these features, to design these features. The idea was then that the front-end developers at the company would build our own UI kit full of components which followed the designs in the Tempo design language. And we were super excited to get started on this, so we could just build our own kit, throw out Bootstrap, and use it instead. And one important step in this process was forming the Tempo UI discipline, which is a group of all front-end developers at the company. And we can then, in this discipline, we can align on best practices, libraries, frameworks, and the overall direction for front-end development at the company. It's probably not important to do this for most companies, but for a company this size that was spread in multiple countries, it was an important step. And now we were finally ready to build our very own Tempo UI kit. But how do you really do that? We had never really done that before. And there are many important decisions to be made in the beginning, many things to get right. And a couple of them here. So one of the most important things is to work closely with the designers. So you have to gain access to their sketch files or Figma files or whatever they use, align with them on how the UI components should behave and share their vision for what you want to be able to do with these components in the future. And then also you have to align on the requirements. Who will be the consumer of this kit? Will this only be used indoors for employees of the company, or will you make it open source at some point? What level of documentation is needed, or do you even need documentation? How complicated should the components in the UI kit be? Should you just have the simple ones, or simple UI components like buttons or popovers, or should you go for something more complex like a reusable reporting component of sorts or something like that? And finally, and the most important thing, is to align on the technology that you would use to build the kit. And here we at Tempo made a crucial mistake, which ended up costing us a lot of time and frustration. So we did not reach an alignment within this UI discipline. A majority of the people wanted to build the kit using React and style components, while a minority wanted to use raw CSS and JavaScript. The reason being that if the kit is written in just vanilla JavaScript and CSS, we don't restrict the consumer of the kit to be using React. So we made a very bad decision where we chose to do some kind of a hybrid where we had this one kit written in raw CSS and JavaScript, and then we had another React UI kit on top of that, and that was the one that we would then use in our products. This is another example of bad engineering at Tempo. And we have paid for this a lot. This caused a lot of frustration because every time a developer really wanted to do something new to the kit, he or she would have to first go to the vanilla kit implemented there, and then go to the React kit implemented there, and then finally use it and notice that something is broken, and then go back to the other kit. And it was just very frustrating, very bad. And after a few months of this, we just threw this away. And we only have one UI kit now, implemented fully in React and style components, and it's awesome. So, the technologies and tools we use to implement the Tempo UI kit, we use Storybook for interactive documentation. Just for unit testing, we host it on Bitbucket and use Bitbucket pipelines to when we merge to master, we build the storybook and we upload it to an S3 bucket, so it's available for all employees of Tempo to check it out and play around with it. And then we use, the most important library we use is styled components. So for those of you who are not familiar with it, it's an amazing library for React where it allows you to write CSS directly into your components in a very nice way, and it prevents your CSS code from bleeding outside of the component where it's being used. It's really good. I recommend it. Then we have some more tools such as Lerna for package management. And then when we commit our code, we use conventional commits to help with versioning our packages. So Lerna can detect, like, because we're using conventional commits, it can detect if your commit would lead to a major version upgrade or a minor or a patch. It's really cool. And then Lerna can use these commits to automatically generate change logs for these packages. So it's really cool. We use Husky to lint these commit messages to be sure they are conventional. And last but not least, we use Prettier and ESLint. So I'm going to just show you a bit. Show you the kit a bit. Okay. So this is it. uikit.tempo.is. It's only available if you're on the company network. So we have very many components. Most of them are pretty basic. We have the buttons. These are our buttons. And we have also drop-downs and whatnot. So the components most of them are pretty basic, but many of them depend on other UIKit components. So for instance, we have something more complicated like a multi-picker. Let's take a look at that. So this is a multi-picker where it's a button that opens a popover, which has an input where you can search and use then hey. Yes, just for you. Okay, and then apply it. And now you're wondering, hey, how does this code look? So you go to the docs, and you can see the code. So yeah, some components have better documentation than others. Let's take a look at the date range picker. This is one of the more complicated ones. So these are here buttons which open a popover with 2 inputs, two date pickers. We have here pre-selected date ranges and animation and stuff. So also under notes, we can see the automatically generated change log. You can see what breaking stuff we have been doing here, bug fixes, blah, 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 breaking changes. It's really cool. And last but not least, we have the tempo colors, very important. But yeah, anyways, we have around 30 packages here in the kit, and it's being very actively worked upon by many developers at the company. So yes, back to my slides. So here's an old video of tempo reports, and you can see that there are loads of components from the kit here. The drop-down, the checkboxes, the buttons, and there's the date range picker. And then when a new team in Canada started working on a new product called Tempo for Zendesk, they could just move so fast because most of these building blocks were already implemented and accessible, like the date range picker, and more. And you might not, there's. So yeah, that's about it. Some best practices. Be mindful of which components should be part of your UI kit. So it's better to focus first on lightweight, reusable components and don't add overly complicated components with too much business logic in there because it can be very difficult to maintain that. And encourage people to fix bugs in the kit, not do workarounds in your code. And it's also, this is my favorite one. So the API for the UI kit very carefully because this kit will be one of the most important APIs at your company. At least that's what has happened with us at Tempo. Very brief summary of the do's and don'ts. Work closely with designers, and yeah, make it visible in-house. What I showed you earlier, the demo, that is accessible to all employees. It has been one of the most important things we did. Don't do 2 UI kits like we did. So don't do it. So more, I just wanted to end the talk a bit about talking about the benefits of building your own UI kit and what it has meant for us. So you will definitely move faster because you don't have to build all of these UI components again and again and again. You just have them in one place. And developers who are not that good at CSS, they feel more comfortable with using this UI kit. They just trust it. They don't have to worry about writing CSS, and they feel like they're more autonomous when building features. And of course, when you isolate most of your reusable UI components in your own UI kit, you can very easily evolve your look and feel as need be. And right now, as we're speaking, we are working on rebranding Tempo. We will have a new logo coming next month, and new colors, and new navigation, whatnot. And most of the work is happening inside our UI kit. And then we can just update the package dependencies in our products and get most of this new rebranding work for free. Well, it's actually more work than that, but still, the rebranding changes themselves are mostly only happening inside the kit. But the biggest benefit is having complete control over how your product should look and feel like, instead of being dependent upon some external UI kit, such as Bootstrap or whatever. So that has definitely been the biggest benefit of building our own UI kit. And thank you very much. Are there any questions? Is it ever going to be open sourced? Maybe. First, when we started out, we wanted to make it open source, but no, it's more complicated than that. But maybe, yeah. Yes. TypeScript support. Great question. We haven't reached an alignment within the UI discipline of Tempo on TypeScript now. It's still a hot topic, actually. Just curious, how many people here use TypeScript? Yeah, we're going to add TypeScript support this year to the UI kit before we go open source. Yes?
Why specifically style components when things like CSS modules or other libraries, similar things could prevent the CSS bleed?
Repeat the question.
Great question. Why use style components when we could have instead used CSS modules and other types of libraries that do exactly the same thing? Sindri. I don't remember exactly why. It wasn't just style components kind of. Do you remember why we chose style components over CSS?
Because of
Jira
Jira Server.
Server.
Yeah, to CSS with CSS modules, we had to configure our webpack way too much.
Yeah. Yeah, it was a smaller webpack config. That's a good enough answer, I think.
There was also some legacy features, so we had to also bundle normal CSS files and
Yeah.
had checks for that, so the webpack config was very complicated.
Yeah.
So practical reasons.
Yes, practical reasons. Anyways, thank you very much, and maybe just let's get to the next talk so we can start eating pizza in 20 minutes.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
borga ekki. Ég vil ekki bara lega fólki ná sér í pítsu. Eða hvað, ég hef ekki að gera það.
Yeah.
Ná sér bara í og setjast með hana.
Yeah. The pizzas are here, so we'll just get them inside and take a short break. Everyone can get a slice and a drink, and then we'll continue in maybe 5 or 10 minutes. Thanks.
The pizzas are ready. Go nuts. There are vegan pizzas. I ordered 3 of them. I'm not sure if we can notice, but it's the ones that don't have meat on them. Yeah. Já. Hérna. Festa þetta í vasanum.
Já, það er ekki bara einfaldast.
Jú. Svo í hálsmálið þitt, bara frekar nálægt. Displays.
Já. Fyrst ætla að náða mér að drakka?
Já, ekki alveg.
Ó, velliskur. En svo getur rétt með bjórinn. Allir. Já. Dans.
Yeah, so it's time to get started again. If you run really fast, you can grab another slice before you sit down. But before we start again, I really want to take the opportunity to talk about this thing that we're trying to do here, this community building, JS Meetup stuff. I really want to challenge everyone that's here to think about what they're doing at work, because I know a lot of companies are doing really cool stuff. So please think about the stuff that you can share, talk ideas, cool technology that you're trying, side projects, just anything. That's been kind of the most work so far is bothering people and asking them to talk. But I'm really happy that Rakel is here to talk about accessibility. And this is a topic that's close to my heart. I think everyone should get a dose of accessibility every now and then. And yeah, please give it up for Rakel.
Hi, my name is Rakel and I work at Colibri. I've been there for the past 2.5 years. And before that, I worked at Advania for 2.5 years. So I'm here talking to you about accessibility. I get stuck all the time, how to empower you to care about accessibility. Is it by telling you it's basic human rights? Is it by telling you that 15% of people have disabilities in the world? Is it by telling you there's one blind person who goes through your website every single day and controls your ranking on Google? Or when I'm talking to a client, can you afford not to implement the website for 15% of your clients? Yeah, sorry. My mouse is lost. See? So it's really unfair that a non-disabled person can apply for a credit card, can shop online, can do it whenever, wherever they want, on their way to work or just, whenever. But a disabled person does not have that option. It has to go physically to the store, to the bank, and apply for a credit card or do their shopping. And for me, it's just not fair. I haven't always been focused on accessibility, and when I think about my time at school, it didn't really get mentioned. And it wasn't until I had worked at Advania for a year, I got a website, Þjóðskrá, and I had to do the HTML and CSS and JavaScript, and I had to make it accessible. I had no idea what to do. So I started Googling how to make website accessible. And I got some tools. There were online tools. There were extensions in my browser that I could use. And I did all the recommended stuff. I got 100 score out of 100. But I had no idea how it got translated to the screen reader because I didn't have a screen reader on my computer. So it was enough that I got a score 100 out of 100. And it got the most accessible website 2017. And I have no idea how. But there was like a blind person who went through the website and said like, yeah, you did a great job. But there was always a voice in the back of my head like, how does this work? Like, how does a link translate to a screen reader? So what to do? I remember I asked a lot of developers, what can I do to learn about accessibility, where to start? And nobody had answers. They just rolled their eyes, like when I mentioned the word documentation. Like, nobody wants to talk about it. So I just started Googling everything that I was doing, and I just added the word accessibility to it. So when I was doing accordion, I just added the word accessible. And I clicked for, like, example, like 5 links or something. One told me to use ARIA attributes, and another one told me not to use ARIA attributes. Then I was supposed to use tab index, and then it was forbidden to use tab index. So I always thought I had something, like, yes, this is correct. And then I just got back to square one. So, like being a developer, I was off by 1. I should have started with square 0. And that is how a screen reader really works. It was not easy find. I just wanted the article or something to tell me how it really worked. So all browsers that support accessibility include an accessibility API. And this is built into the browser. And that generates accessibility tree. And this is just a screenshot from Chrome. So where you can see the styles, you have like the accessibility tab. And I don't use screen reader every day. This is enough for me. Like I can inspect a link, and I can see there what is generated and what the screen reader will read. So we have the contents, and then we have the role link. So that was enough for me for now. So I just want to quickly go over the users, because for me, I thought it was just blind people. And that's really not the case. For example, if we talk about people who are colorblind, this is like a very generic mistake that when you have an input and the only validation that the user can see is a red or green border, nothing else. And for somebody who's colorblind, they can't see the difference. So they just think that the website is broken or the form. So they just continue with their life and do something else. This is also good to have in mind when you're doing like pie charts and line charts, like don't have it only based on colors. And this is a really cool extension. It's called I Want to See Like the Colorblind. And this is like a last check that I do. And it's just a really good reminder to have the content not based on color. So the visually impaired and dyslexia have the same criteria. You have to have a readable font, you have to have good spacing, and you have to consider not to have the sentences too long on the screen, like 20 words per line or something. And I recently learned that people with dyslexia, they use screen readers. So they listen to the screen reader and they read. So that's also helpful for them. People with reduced mobility, example, if we take a person who has 100% sight, but they have a problem using the mouse, they use the tab key on the keyboard. So it's really important that they see where they are. And I know me as a developer, when I'm working on a button or input, I always remove the focus border. And if I don't do it, the designer tells me to do it because it's ugly. So this is really important for just to see where you are. So if you remove it when you're doing a button, I do that too, just add it back in. And there's also, if you just Google it, you can find a focus border for buttons and inputs when you're using the keyboard, so it doesn't show when you're using the mouse, if that's pleasing to the designer. And then ADHD, just consider not to have too many animations, nothing too crazy. It's the only thing that I can say here. The most common mistakes, I also do like audits for people and companies for accessibility. So what I've noticed is that people don't add alt attributes to images. I remember learning this at school, and I thought the alt attribute was only rendered when the browser couldn't render the image. So it would have some placeholder text. But I was completely wrong. It's also for screen readers. So if you have this image here and you don't have the alt attribute, the screen reader will read the source path. And I remember when I was working at Advania, we were told just add something to the alt. So they would put in the source path and the alt attribute. And to keep in mind here, like if it's decorative, just have an empty alt tag. The screen reader will detect the image, see there's an empty alt tag, and just move on. And you never have to say like picture off or image off. The screen reader will do that for you. Contrast, there's so many contrast errors. It's ridiculous, but me as a developer, I always have a conversation with the designer and just tell them like this is not accessible. And sometimes I just tell them like just 2 pixels up on the font size, and that's enough. So I feel like it's our job also as developers that we look out for the contrast. This is the most common one, and that all page content must be contained by landmarks. I had no idea what it was for. It was just something that Google told me all the time. So it's really hard for screen readers to reach a content that's not inside a landmark. And landmarks are like main, nav, aside, header, and footer. Also, a really cool thing about screen readers, they have like have this view for the screen reader user. They can see all the landmarks, and it's like an index of a book. So this is something that we need to consider when we are building up a web page. They also can see like a list of links that are on the web page and a list of buttons. And to keep in mind there is when you have like a web page with news articles and you have like see more, see more, see more, they will just get a list of see mores. Like they can't see what's behind it. So you can easily add an ARIA attribute to the link and just add the name of the news or the article. So it would be see more about this. This is my favorite sentence after I got into accessibility, that if it behaves like a button, looks like a button, then it is a button. I know when I first started and I was doing a button, like you start off with this awful gray thing with black borders and it just looks awful. And you have to start by stripping away the background color and the border. And most commonly you would use a div or span because it's like a clean component for you. But there's so much that you also have to do if you're using a div or a span. You have to give it a role, you have to say it's a role button, and you have to give it a tab index, and there's multiple things that we will miss. So it's really important just to use the basic HTML attributes that you can use. And also a thing to keep in mind here, a button is a call to action. So it's like opening a model pop-up window or submitting a form. Those, like, they have to look like a button. And a link, it changes the path or the URL. So you have to keep this in mind, that a button looks like a button and a link looks like a link. So many times I see forms and they don't have a label. They only have a span or a paragraph next to it. So a screen reader user would go through the form and it doesn't know what the input is about because it doesn't have an associated label with it. I remember when I started at Advania, I was supposed to do a radio button, and I did a radio button input, and I did a span, and then I had to do an on-click, and I had to talk to the input. It was just ridiculous. So just use the core elements. I wanted to tell you a story about a colleague of mine. His name is JD. He's from South Africa. And I was with him from day one when he arrived to Iceland. And he had to get a kennitala, he had to apply for debit cards, he had to shop at IKEA. And it was really important for him that HTML had a lang attribute. Because if it didn't have that, he couldn't Google Translate the web page. So he just wrote a template, an email. It's just like, don't you care about accessibility? I can't use your website. And can you really afford to lose my business? I know people. And he put on a reminder for 3 days, and he checked again. If it wasn't fixed by then, he would write them an email how to fix it, because he just thought it was ridiculous. So a little bit about the things that the tools won't tell you. This is the worst thing that I can't develop. It's a modal pop-up window. I really hate developing them. And especially making them accessible. If you don't do it from the beginning, it's going to be a pain in the ass, and it's going to take 2 weeks because you don't know what you're doing. The first thing to keep in mind here is the button that opens up the pop-up window. You have to tell the user that they're opening up a window where they are trapped. So you can add an area attribute to the button to tell them that. And when they open a modal pop-up, the focus has to be inside the modal pop-up at all time until the user closes it. So when you're tapping through the modal pop-up, you have to go in circles. You can't go outside. And you always have to end with the X, or they have to use escape to go outside the modal pop-up. I tried to find a good example, but I couldn't find it. So yeah. It's also things like skip the navigation link. It should be on top of the main, and it should be before you go into the menu. Because you imagine going through a website and you're navigating, and you have to listen to the navigation every time. So this is a neat way to we care about you, let's just skip the content. And it has to be focusable and also visible for people who are using the tab key. I thought the screen reader would do this for me. I thought screen readers would see, it would open in a new tab or a new window, but they don't. You have to tell the user. I know there's a misspelling, it's supposed to be _ blank. So this is one of many, many ways to do this. This is just a global style. So every link that has a target blank, we add a before element with the content opens a new tab. And the other stuff is just to hide the content. So this is also to keep in mind that everything that's in your content will be read by screen readers. Other things to keep in mind is when you have a search form and the user is typing in, it hits search, and nothing happens. They can't, we have to tell the screen reader that something happened. So we can add an area live attribute to the div that contains the search results. And it's area live, and you put polite, then they will read out loud when the new search results come in. And also routing, React router, next router, they don't have accessibility built in them. So when you're routing between pages, you get thrown out of the browser. So you have to tap into the browser again. So this is really bad, and I've been making Git tickets so many times. I want to show you a video of voice control. I don't know if you've seen this, but it just, to keep in mind that a button has to look like a button, and a link is a link. See? Does audio work?
Wake up. Voice control is a breakthrough feature that gives you full control of your devices, with just your voice, period. It's a whole new way to do everything you love, period. Like this. Correct love. 16. Open photos. Scroll up. Show numbers. 13. Click share. 3. Tim. Next field. Let's try this one today. Thumbs up emoji. Click send. Open maps. Show grid. Long press at 20. Open app switcher. 4. Tap share. Tap Tim. Tap send. Hey, good to see you. Open music. Turn up the volume.
So I think it's really important that a button is a button. Like this new technology is here. You can try it with your computer. It's really awesome. But just stick to the core. See? Yeah, that was all I was going to say. Any questions? Yeah?
Are there any libraries that can help you?
Iceland, you can have settings there for accessibility, but most people turn it off. I use Storybook a lot. They have like an accessibility feature built in, so it just screams at you if something is wrong. There's a lot of NPM packages that you can have on pre-push and pre-commit that just yells at you like, no, this is not accessible. And also I want to talk about site improve extension. It's like the best extension to get when you're getting into accessibility because it makes you manually go over everything on your web page. Even though you have an alt attribute on your image, it would like check, like, is this the correct alt attribute? So you can't miss anything with a website when you're checking for accessibility. Sorry?
What was the name of the?
Site improve. Yeah.
Were there a lot of mistakes when you got the award in 2017?
I haven't checked. Like, I haven't gone through with a screen reader. It was 3 years ago, so I'm not going to check that. Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That's the last scheduled talk for today. But I think we can stay here for a little while and get to know each other a little bit better, talk about cool stuff. And please, if you have anything that if you're doing something cool, just reach out to me or Ayer or some of the organizers. But yeah, thank you so much. See you next time.